The next big question, I think maybe is the elephant in the room. Obviously, there's a new shop that just opened a couple of doors next door. How do you think Rapha is then setting itself apart from the big brands here? I think it's a trend now that we see even in City Hall. There's another big shop that's there, and they're all opening shops here. Do you think that's affecting the brand Rapha and your sales? And thoughts about that?
I think. Okay, this is a very interesting question, and thank you very much for asking this.
Probably ask you later. Maybe I can ask you one of it now. Do you think that it's a very elitist brand? Because someone actually asked me like, why is Rapha so elitist, and is it not open to the public, and how can they get access to all this?
Okay, I think I can see how it may appear to be elitist. I mean, like if you see like a whole group of people riding together wearing the same thing, ultimately you'll be thinking like they probably come from the same income bracket. It's a little bit better. I don't need to shout. We've got a speaker. Pretty amazing technology. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome and introduce to you guys Oompa Loompa.
I can't really hear myself. Hey guys,
Can hear you.
cool. This is on, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so this is gonna be quite an interesting session. This is the first time we are doing this live recorded. Oompa Loompa has never done this. I've also never done this. So we would request for your leniency and a little bit of understanding when we're doing this, okay? It's the first time for all of us. Okay, so why you're so quiet?
Maybe it's the mask. Maybe it's the mask.
Don't so quiet. Okay. Okay, thank you very much for being here. I think it is truly a monumental time for Rapha and the team. Rapha has turned 20 years. 20 years is a very, very, very ripe, long time. It is quite rare to have a cycling apparel brand last anything more than like 10 years, 15 years, other than obviously a few of the old school cycling brands out there. So I think it's truly a monumental time for Rapha. I mean, if you think about 20 years, how old were you 20 years ago? It's like almost like an unimaginable, past in point in time. So I think it's truly a monumental time, and it's really, really great reason to celebrate. I think it's even greater reason to celebrate given that you guys, so many of you are members of the Rapha Cycling Club. Thank you very much for your support, RCCSGP. Yeah.
Chris, I have to add, actually, I only recently became a Rapha member.
Oh, you're a Rapha member?
Because of this event, so I'm a Rapha member. I hope to join your rides, but the problem is, right, you guys start too early, man. When are you guys going to open like a night ride kind of thing? Is it going to ever happen?
Maybe you can come on board as a ride leader and help us lead a night ride.
I don't think I qualify. Maybe these guys are more qualified than me.
No.
Yeah, anyway, should I introduce you? Since,
Yeah.
I mean, the cameras are rolling, so maybe those on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, so Chris, first of all, thanks for inviting me, and to everyone, thanks for coming out. Well, this is obviously going to be some sort of like a live podcast. I've got cameras running, so it'll be online on YouTube. And we have a lot to talk about, I guess, because it's your 20th anniversary, so congratulations on that. And I actually have a script, because I'm very nervous. There's a lot of live people here. But maybe we can start off with... to introduce yourself. I know maybe everyone here knows who you are.
Yeah.
But to the online guys who are watching and they don't know who you are, maybe you want to give a bit of introduction.
Okay. I think it's a bit funny for me talking to you because you've got sunglasses on. So I cannot. No, cannot. Okay. So anyway, I think it's also interesting because we ride together so much, but I think past the time when we are on the bike, you may not really know kind of like what Ashley's mentioned, my origin story. So that's me over there. My name is Christopher. I'm a father of two, and I'm happily married to my wife Valerie over there. Yeah. So I think one thing that I really want to recognize is how much my wife has supported me throughout this entire journey. It's not easy like having a spouse or a partner who is traveling all the time, riding a bike, riding in really dangerous places climbing up and down mountains, etc., etc., and obviously getting into more than a couple of accidents. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Is your wife a cyclist?
my wife actually was a cyclist.
Was.
Yeah.
What happened?
So I have a couple of interesting stories about me and my wife cycling. My wife used to follow me on this route that we call the Hump Day route. It occurs on a Wednesday, hence the word hump. But it also goes through a couple of humps, like that. Now we call it the Southern Ridges. So I remember bringing my wife with this route together with me, and then we went up Faber, we went down, we went up Telok Blangah Hill, we went down, then we did a couple more, and then by the time we reached up Pepe's Road, she literally vomited. Yeah, but she was a trooper, which she continued on, and then she finished the entire route with me. So the interesting thing about this route is that it was actually conceptualized by us at Rapha. We were one of the first kind of crews that literally linked everything together. I think this is like more than 10 years ago. And through this route, when you complete it, you will be able to do more than 1,000 meters elevation in one ride.
Right.
Yeah. So you would do the entire route over here, and you would somehow end up towards Bukit Gombak. And back then, it's actually quite simple for you to go into Bukit Gombak, the camp, and do this climb up to some lookout where you can see the entire like Bukit Timah. Yeah.
But I've got a question for Valerie. How many bikes do you have?
How many bikes do I have? I have 3 bikes.
Because on my podcast, my guests are very afraid of their wives. So before I roll, right, I need to ask them, are you okay if I ask you how many bikes? But sorry, put in your spotlight. How many?
No. So I actually feel very strongly about this subject.
Okay.
Yeah. And I may actually like ruffle a couple of people's feathers by saying this. Like, to me, when we make purchases in our relationship, we don't necessarily do it in fear of the other person saying something, about it. Yeah, because like I think the way that we operate is like I trust her to make like the right decision. She trusts me to make the right decisions, and you work hard, you should reward yourself, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So question to Valerie, do you know how much money he has spent on his bikes? You know, okay, so you're safe. Sorry to cut you off. You can continue.
Yeah, but I'm not terribly extravagant when it comes to like my cycling purchases. Because of the frequency that I ride, and obviously the fact that when I ride is literally a form of work for me. I don't, I try my best not to indulge in like all the fancy carbon stuff, all the weight we need stuff. I just buy whatever works. Yeah, like case in point, when I started riding, one of the brands that I fell in love with was Colnago.
Right.
So in my cycling journey, I've actually owned 5 different Colnagos.
Wow, so many.
Yeah, 5 different Colnagos. And my favorite group set at that point of time was Campanolo Super Record. And back then, one Super Record rear derailleur cost something like $900. Yeah. And it's like you had to go and order it from, Ken Hong, and then it would take months to come, etc. And then you go out and you ride, and you someone hits you from behind, derailleur is gone. Like the whole derailleur is literally made of carbon. So I made that conscious decision to switch to something a little bit more robust. So which is why I ended up, when I started working at Rapha, I ended up using like Ultegra. Because everywhere you go in the world, if you go to Taiwan, you go to Malaysia, go to Thailand, you go into a shop, you'll be able to find Shimano. Yeah, it's quite hard to go into a shop and find like Campanolo Super Record.
Yeah. Do you still have Colnagos at home now?
No, unfortunately no. So in my bike stable, like through my cycling journey, I found that I really fallen in love with the material titanium. Yeah, it's not only like how titanium feels to the rider, but also I really fall in love with like the craft behind the bikes that are made out of titanium. A lot of these people that currently make titanium bikes, how they came about working with titanium was literally in the aerospace industry. Yeah, and then as the aerospace industry moved on to another material, they went to branch out to bicycles. So like I really fell in love with the guys working at like IndieFab, Moods, 7 Cycles, and like all these guys spawn like guys like Firefly. Firefly are actually the guys from IndieFab, yeah, etc.
But not aero lah.
I think I might ruffle people's feathers, but the least aero thing on a bicycle is the rider.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So if you want to become more aero, then you just need to, put in the work to become a little bit more flexible
Yeah.
and be comfortable in a more aerodynamic position.
Yeah, if Darren can do it, so everyone can.
Exactly. I think Darren has like two lesser ribs than all of us, so he's able to tuck in a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, cut you off. You can continue.
Okay. So a little bit more about like my cycling journey. So I started with Rapha, I think sometime 2012. Yeah. And it's been an amazing journey for me. It's brought me to many, many exotic places to ride bikes. I've been up Doi Internanon several times. I've done Doi Internanon from Chiang Mai to Doi Internanon and back, which is like a 200 km day. I've done Wuling several times as well. I mean, I'm not saying this to like show off or anything. I'm trying to literally tell you that if I can do it, you guys can do it also. Yeah, it's something that may seem crazy or scary or intimidating, but it literally is a matter of just putting one foot in front of the other while you're pedaling. Yeah, and I've also had the opportunity to fly to the French Alps to ride a lot of the monumental climbs done in the tour, as you can see over there. So in my time with Rapha, I have been instrumental in like opening a couple of pop-ups around the region. So we've done I think about 3 or 4 pop-ups here in Singapore. We've done several pop-ups in Hong Kong and Taiwan as well. So that picture over there on the top right is actually me in Hong Kong with I think one of the first pop-ups we did in this place called Hill Road, which is in the Sheung Wan area. Yeah.
In terms of climbs, you said you did Doi Internanon and all the other climbs, right? Which is the hardest, and how do you prep for these kind of climbs? I mean, because Singapore is flat, right? Well, you go up Mount Faber 20 times, or
I think the way that I prep for these kind of climbs essentially is I distilled it down into thinking of the climb as an effort. One thing that I need to preempt you is that obviously I back then when I was like riding and doing all these climbs, I weighed a lot lesser. So it's a little bit easier. But I distilled it down into the thought that, if I'm going to be doing one of these climbs, it would take me a certain amount of time to do.
yeah,
So essentially I would go out and ride, and then I will ride literally on the front, and I will do my effort then.
Yeah.
So is it a 1 hour effort? Is it a 2 hour effort? And then I'll break it down. And one of the things that I found as someone who I'm not built like a climber, basically. As someone who is not built as a climber, I found that my style is I would mix it up between seated and standing. So if I encounter like really, really steep pitches, I would have to stand out and get out of the saddle and use my upper body to pivot the bike.
yeah.
So that's something that I learned very early in my cycling journey. So like using that position to your advantage, and loosening up your elbows and using your palms as pivots while you are like literally like almost dancing with the bike to power up those sections. And then after that, obviously, is to learn to generate power while being seated as well. So it's like a combination of these things, because something like Internanon, right? I think it's like a 40-45 kilometer climb. You really have to strategize, and you really have to know where to use your matches, basically.
And you got to pair your cassette and your group set correctly, right?
Yes. So I
ratio.
found like for me, when I went to the French Alps over there in that picture, I was using, it's quite funny, I was using 5339 because I didn't have money to buy another Campagnolo super record compact crank. But I was using, I think, an 1127 or 28 groups cassette behind, and back then it's 11 speed only. Yeah, so I found that to be okay for me, but I think the sweet spot for me is the mid compact,
Right.
which is I think 5236. Yeah.
Okay. So
And
it's
then,
still doable.
Yeah, it's still doable. It's still doable.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple more pictures about my journey with Rapha. That picture over there in the top left is that's actually a very interesting picture. That was taken, I think, sometime 2011, 2012. And that kind of marked my professional start with the company. That picture was at, it was on a customer ride that was for the pop-up. Our first pop-up is actually across the street over there in Duxton. It was at a shop called Elite Bicycles Asia, ran by this lady called Daphne. That was our very first pop-up. So I showed up for the ride, and you can see, right, like the number of people on that ride in Rapha is not really a lot. So that point of time in Rapha's journey in Singapore is literally at a time where a lot of people were still didn't really have that consciousness of wearing kit to express themselves on a bike. A lot of people ended up like wearing jerseys that were from past events, so like a previous race, OCBC cycle, etc., etc. Not there's nothing wrong with it, but there was a very big disparity because like people were expressing their love for cycling by the bikes they were buying. So they had really nice bikes, really tricked out builds, but the apparel was just a little bit not in line with that level of expression on the bike. So when we opened up, one interesting thing was that, so back then I was working as a professional photographer. Okay, so I was on that ride, and then I approached Adam. Adam Taylor, who was one of the Rapha staff, and I said to him like, hey, you've got this ride going, you've got this pop-up going. Do you need a photographer? Because like now there's this thing called Facebook. Okay, this is like 12 years ago, right? I said now there's this thing called Facebook, and to what I feel is like if it's not on Facebook, it probably never happened. So I said like if you want, I can go and shoot photos for you. You can give me a jersey. So back then I couldn't afford anything from Rapha because I spent all my money on my Colnago and Campanos record. So that was literally my first kind of like.
No, because I see some of the photos that you take. It looks very professionally taken. I mean, obviously now that you tell me you're a professional photographer, so you are one of those guys who ride on a bike and have your expensive cameras hanging at the back.
Oh no! I can't do that. I leave that to there's several talented people out there. I mean, like Caleb, Ashley, Sean. They're really good at doing these things. Of course, Dennis, can't forget him. But for me, I lack the bike handling skills to do that. Really, you'll see the very first pop up that we did in 2012. This was on Duxton Road, literally just across the street from where we were. And I remember seeing that excitement and that level of happiness, right? Seeing this for the first time, because back then, all that I knew of Rapha was what I saw on YouTube and the website. The website back then and the website now, it looks completely different. But seeing all these products in person, like literally, like ignited something within me. You can see in the picture on the top right, we have our logo T-shirts, our pro team jerseys, our country jerseys, super lightweight jerseys, and that jersey over there. That tribute jersey is actually hanging over here. So
what's the significance of this jersey?
So one of the things that we've always done is that we've always tied back. We've always celebrated specific heritage moments in cycling with a tribute that we ourselves kind of put together. So this one over here is one of them. We've done stuff like highlighting like Andy Hampston's Giro jersey, the Pantani jersey, even like the jerseys that the riders in Colombia, when they were all like doing their climbs, were doing, etc., etc. So something like this is really interesting because this is kind of like a signature material for us in the very beginning. It's a sport wool blend with a merino base. So what this means is that the jersey doesn't stick to you because it's natural fiber. It doesn't hold any odors. And one of the things that I really liked about these jerseys is that it has a lot of very nice embroidered features over here. So nothing is printed. Everything is nice and embroidered. And I think for something that is from 2012, it looks really, really amazing today.
But can you imagine riding this now?
I did this morning.
Really?
I did not this exact one. Don't worry. But I do enjoy wearing these jerseys a lot because I think that there is a lot of beautiful stories to tell in cycling that we should be celebrating. And I think while I think it's interesting, having a new design every week, having something exciting to wear in your wardrobe to motivate you to cycle. I think it's also important that we look back on these stories because then we will be able to appreciate that this sport that we love so much is actually really, really big. And it's taken like a lot of sacrifice and a lot of efforts from other people to get to the point it is today.
Can I ask questions? You can tell me if I cannot ask, but how do you think the prices have changed then until now?
Then until now, I think in terms of, I can't tell you a number because I have not been actively tracking like the price increase, but I don't think I don't think that we are priced unreasonably high. I think for the amount of tech that goes into it, the amount of thought that goes into it, the design, etc., etc., I think we are priced quite fairly, in my opinion. And if I think back to the time when we didn't have the RCC, if I think back to the time where we didn't have a clubhouse, where we didn't have a pop-up happening every month, that was literally how I managed to get like all these people riding with me. Every time I went out, I saw someone, wearing Rapha, and I just went up to talk to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important to do what you're doing? If not, people might think. Actually, I have some questions that some people submitted to me,
Yes.
which I'll probably ask you later. Maybe I can ask you one of it now. Do you think that it's a very elitist brand? Because someone actually asked me like, why is Rapha so elitist, and is it not open to the public, and how can they get access to all this?
Okay, I think I can see how it may appear to be elitist. I mean, like if you see like a whole group of people riding together wearing the same thing, ultimately you'll be thinking like they probably come from the same income bracket, or they probably share a certain passion for a collective brand that I don't get or I don't understand. But I think when you break that down and you really get to know us, if you come for, let's say, our Friday social ride, you would quickly realize that we're actually very nice people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things that we've been doing in the community that I think I would say are first out there. So one of the things that I'm particularly proud of that the team has been doing is this series of rides called Inter-Club Rides, where we actively seek out, like, let's say a different club out there and, say, hey, come and ride with us. Let's do something together. And I think this whole attitude of, us versus them, I don't necessarily think that this really existed at the level of intensity that it did maybe like 10 years ago. And I think this is really because of like social media.
Yeah.
We're on our phones all the time. We're looking at Instagram and it's like, oh, look, this person posts this person posts that kind of thing. Last time there was no social media. Everybody met up at Longhouse and it's like you rolled up and it's like, hey, can I join your ride? Yeah, sure, come join my ride. And then after that, you just make friends like usual, like normal people do,
Yeah.
So with this series of inter-club rides, what we try to do is we try to break down those barriers and we try to distill and pare back that approach back to what it should be. Literally it's as simple as riding bikes together, regardless of what brand you wear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for non-Rapha members and they want to join the rides, I know Rapha goes with some membership that they have to
Yes.
pay and then you join the rides, right? So let's say I'm not a Rapha member, how do I get access?
Okay, so if you're not a Rapha member, you want to come and join our rides, we have a ride every Friday called the Friday Social Ride. You can just rock up to MacRitchie at 5:30 a.m. If you see a whole bunch of people with blinking lights on their bikes, it's probably us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So MacRitchie at 5:30.
Yeah,
Friday.
and I think one thing that a lot of members will hear me say is like, like it is a Rapha ride, it is executed by the RCC, but I always tell them you can wear anything you want, just wear something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was waiting up here and it was really, really cold. And I'm obviously not appropriately dressed because we had started right at the bottom of Genting where it's very, very hot. And as a general rule of thumb, from what I've experienced, every 100 meters you go up in elevation, you probably lose like about 1 to 2 degrees. So at the top is very, very different from the temperature at the bottom. So this is Serenely, ex-national cyclist Serenely, as she was struggling up Genting. Not really struggling, she was hammering it. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Because recently I went over to Australia in Perth during winter, and it was my first time riding in a winter country, right? So the problem is, we ride in Singapore, it's hot 24/7, and we only have one gear. So I had the issue of not having the right gear. So I went to Australia. I was the only fool wearing Bibs shorts.
Okay.
Everyone had like warmers and everything, and they're like, "What the hell are you trying to do, man? What's the advice? Like, what should I buy actually?"
This is very interesting because like I have ridden in Perth a couple of times and my experience is very different from yours because when I rocked up to the start, so I stayed in a place down south and then I linked up with this group called the South Perth Rulers. And the start point, right, was something like 70 to 80k away from where I was staying. Yeah, so I was not used to riding in colder climates. This was before my time working with Rapha. So I brought along with me like 3/4 bibs, arm warmers, knee warmers, and then a rain jacket. And then I'll ride up all the way. And then when I rocked up to the start point, right, all the Aussie riders are just wearing jerseys and nicks. Nobody is wearing like winter kit. And then I very quickly understood why. Because the moment we started riding and these guys were really pushing the pace, your body naturally heats up. Yeah. So I think as an advice, like what I could advise you is that I think when you're riding in I would say like changeable conditions, okay, what you should do is that you should be layering up with versatility.
Right.
So there's a couple of options. If let's say you choose to go like long sleeve jerseys, and then after that a jacket or a gilet, ultimately what you'll be doing is that you'll be closing yourself off to other options, because with a long sleeve jersey you won't be able to separate the sleeves. So in my opinion, what I would advise is you could pack along, you could wear a jersey together with, let's say, a merino base layer.
Okay.
So with a merino base layer, what that will help you do is that it will allow you to stay cool. So if it gets too hot, you can just unzip and then cool off. Yeah. And then you could possibly pack along a gilet or a rain jacket. So if it gets too hot, you can always remove the arm sleeves, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So you think about it in terms of versatility. If you have a long sleeve jersey, then it will be in an environment that you know that the temperature is quite constant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was totally unprepared for that.
How was the temperature like?
I think it was in the mornings. It was almost like 5 degrees.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Was
it's
it raining?
really chilly. No, it wasn't raining. But when you start riding, you feel the wind. Then it's when it really hits you, and it's too late, right?
Yeah.
Totally unprepared. Yeah.
So I think another thing also is to have that faith and confidence and trust in your body that you will warm up. So one thing that I used to do is that if I felt cold, I would just spin at a higher. This shot over here is in this place called Tiger Leaping Gorge. It's one of the deepest gorges in the whole world. It's a really, really beautiful place. And it is, back then when I went to do this and I went to Google like what is Tiger Leaping Gorge, it actually came up on like one of the most dangerous roads to drive on in the world. So all of these roads do not feature a guardrail.
Right.
Yeah, if you look.
So if you're gone, you're gone.
Yeah. And I remember going up on this thing and I was at the back of a pickup truck. So we were back at the pickup truck and everybody's holding on to the edge of the pickup truck. I'm sorry, yeah. So everybody's holding on to the edge of the pickup truck for dear life. And at certain points, when you pass certain areas and you look down, you can literally see a wreck of a car.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're on your road bike.
No, I'm not on a bike. Yeah. So
Okay.
I was either on the back of a motorcycle or I'm on the back of a pickup truck.
But these guys are on their road bikes.
Yes, they're on road bikes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So another thing that I was very lucky to do at my tenure at Rapha was to be embedded with Team Sky. So I was embedded with Team Sky for about 4 stages of Tour de Langkawi when they came over here to race.
How was it like being embedded with them? Like,
Wow.
you get a chance to speak to all these riders
Yes.
and stuff. So
Yes.
what could you see that we do not normally see?
Okay, and for a start, right, like when I go into these situations as a photographer, the very first thing that you need to do is that you need to really humble yourself. You need to humble yourself and tell yourself that you're here as an observer. You're here to appreciate what they're doing and to document it. You know, like some people say, like, you know, leave only footprints, take only photographs. Yeah, you don't want to go down there and say like, hey, I'm the photographer, I want this to happen, etc., etc. I remember the first day when I was there, I was waiting for them to arrive to the hotel. And while I was there, I was just like shooting other people, making friends, and I met like a lot of people who are truly amazing. I met up with this guy called Rajan. So Rajan was actually the mechanic for Team Sky. He's a Malaysian guy. Yeah. So he's a legend in the pro peloton. I also met up with another guy called Faisal. So Faisal runs DreamWorks Cycles now in Malaysia. He's an amazing mechanic. He used to wrench for teams like Dimension Data, etc. Amazing guy. Now, whenever I go to Malaysia, I always take the opportunity to have him work on my bike because
So-
I know it'll be perfect.
So in your 4 years with Team Sky, would you see
I was there 4 stages with
4
them.
stages?
Yeah.
In that 4 stages, you would see the whole action happening, like mechanics
Yes.
running down, fixing
Yes.
bikes and stuff.
Yes.
So they're really quick.
Yes. So one thing about Team Sky is just how organized and how at every juncture and every touch point of that cycling journey, they obsess over every single detail. And I thought to myself, it really, really drew a lot of parallels to what we do at Rapha. Like for example, in the team car, whenever we are seated in the team car and we're following the riders, back then, it is at a point of time where it's pre-pandemic, right? This is way, way before the pandemic. Nobody is conscious about hand sanitizer, sanitizing your hands, etc. But there was a hand sanitizer in the car. Every time you handle a bidon, you would sanitize your hands.
What?
So to ensure that the riders don't catch something and you don't
Yeah.
catch something from the riders.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. When the riders come in, like before the start of the race, everything will be fine-tuned. The mechanics will obsess over every single detail of the bike.
Do they change the chain every certain stage, or do they just really run them all?
I didn't see anybody change chains, but
Yeah.
I did see a lot of riders bring spare bikes.
Okay.
Yeah, which is I think, if you ask like other teams, it may seem like overkill for something like this, for like Tour de Langkawi, an invitational race, but I did remember seeing a lot of like spare bikes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And just like so many spares. Like there was this Cycon bike bag just full of bidons.
Right.
Full of water bottles. Yeah. It's really, really amazing.
But obviously it's not water in there, right? They have
No,
got
there's
all
no water
their-
inside. And even like whenever they like started in the morning, the mechanics, the soigneurs will actually go to the supermarket to buy like a shopping list of things for the riders. So like the riders will have, specific cereals, specific yogurts that they would like to eat, specific type of water. The soigneurs will even have a special pillow for the riders to ensure that when they go to sleep, they will have the right amount of sleep and they will sleep in the right environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is also a shot that I'm particularly blessed to be able to take. I was huddled up all the way in the corner of the car seat, pointing my lens at, I think this was one of the riders' Oakley jawbone glasses. Yeah, while he was hanging onto the car having a conversation with the DS. Yeah, so like what I said just now, I was particularly privileged to be able to capture them in their natural environment. And I think the ultimate aim for me was just to be an observer, a fly on the wall. I was very lucky to be able to sit into the race briefings. So I think as a photographer, or even as a person, it's very important for us to, when we enter a situation, to be as humble and to be as kind as possible, to try and establish rapport and to be as friendly as possible.
Right.
Because if you don't establish that rapport, people will not be able to break down those barriers and and to kind of release their guard and allow you in. So as I was saying just now, like how much they obsess over every single detail. And I remember them telling me like every single day they will have to send all their data to, their central Team Sky HQ, where the chief coach, the chief doctor can look at every single detail that they are doing. Yeah.
Has there been a situation where you want to take the shot, like maybe after a stage, and they're like super tired, and you try to take that shot, and they like, you know what, don't take my photo now?
Yes, there have been. But I think, you see, the thing is, when you are able to build that rapport from the start, they understand why you're there, and they also understand that you are a cyclist as well. They will allow you to have the opportunity to take it. But obviously, if there's a juncture or there's a situation where the guy says like, hey, no pictures, I would respectfully agree to that. Because I know, there are some times where, for example, if a rider goes down and then they're bloody, they don't want their family to be seeing them in that state. And obviously it's just not a very particular part of the sport that you want to be celebrating. Yeah.
Another question, right? Since you get access to all this, do you think that their bikes are different from what you can get on retail?
No, not at all.
So they're the same?
It's the same thing.
No thicker carbon or whatever?
No. From what I observed back then when I was shooting this, in fact, like a lot of the guys were not using full carbon wheels. Back then, there was this wheel called the Shimano Dura Ace C50, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of the bikes featured the aluminium brake track, for extra robustness.
Okay. So nothing special.
Nothing special with the bike. Nothing special with the bike. A lot of them were using tubulars back then. There was no tubeless, but nothing special with the bike. Nobody is using like weight-winning components or anything like that. Everybody was just using standard Dura Ace, standard Ultegra Di2. Yeah. So this shot also, the rider being handed over a bidon by the soigneur behind. one thing that was really cool to observe was seeing like the stuff that we made being used in the Pro Peloton, like with my own eyes. I mean, I would see pictures, I would watch videos, but nothing is like observing it firsthand. What you don't see in this picture is the number of bottles that were squeezing behind his jersey. So literally like 8 bottles being squeezed behind the domestic as the domestic was running up and down the peloton passing bottles.
Can I ask the questions now?
Sure,
I think these are the burning questions that I think is very interesting. But before I do that, right, is my camera still running?
Yes.
Okay, because this needs to be recorded.
Okay.
The first question that I want to ask, again, this is a combination of questions that my followers submitted and some are from me. The first one is, in your opinion, you are the country manager for Rapha. Do you think cycling will ever regain its peak popularity that it reached during COVID? And do you see a drop in membership or sales reflecting this?
So I think during COVID to me, like now when I think back, it's almost like it's very, very difficult to imagine, even though we've all experienced it ourselves. Empty roads, rules telling you that you cannot go out, rules telling you that you can only socialize in X number of groups, etc., etc. Curfews, etc., etc. Scanning a QR code to go into a shopping center. And then obviously the fact that we had to all retreat into our houses, the fact that we couldn't go to gyms, the fact that we couldn't travel, everybody decided to ride bikes. Truly beautiful thing, right? I personally don't think that this will ever happen again. Yeah. But I do think that cycling has made a truly beautiful reset. I wouldn't say it's a reset to pre-COVID levels. I think it is a reset to putting cycling at a point where we've had the opportunity to allow unprecedented levels of people to experience the love and the beauty of the sport. That joy of riding a bike. And if you think about it in the Singaporean context, right, we probably grow up with riding a bike. Yeah, I don't know anybody who has not ridden a bike as a child, but we very quickly lose that love for that bicycle. The moment, we focus our lives on study, the moment we focus our lives on work, and then coming back to the bicycle again, having that amount of freedom. To me, riding a bicycle is the closest thing you will ever feel to flying. Yeah.
The next,
So like to continue, will it ever reach back to that same level? I don't think so. Do we see like a drop? Yes, we do, like everybody else. But what I do see is a group of people who have experienced the sport, and have fallen in love with it and have chosen to live life by bike. Yeah. So a lot of the people out here in the audience are pandemic cyclists. Correct? Pandemic cyclists, put up your hand. Yeah, don't be shy. I welcome you with open arms. Yeah. I think it is truly beautiful thing that you're here with us. I do hear some people sometimes say, pandemic cyclists, etc., etc. But I think we are all in this together. I mean, regardless of what bike you ride, if you ride a small wheels bike, if you ride a road bike, if you ride a mountain bike, cycling is truly for the greater good of the environment and society. Yeah.
I've got 2 more questions. I know we all have to go to work tomorrow, including myself. I don't do this full time. The next big question, I think maybe is the elephant in the room. Obviously, there's a new shop that just opened a couple of doors next door. How do you think Rapha is then setting itself apart from the big brands here? I think it's a trend now that we see even in City Hall. There's another big shop that's there, and they're all opening shops here. Do you think that's affecting the brand Rapha and your sales? And thoughts about that?
I think, okay, this is a very interesting question, and thank you very much for asking this. Okay, I personally think that it is an amazing thing for the cycling community. The fact that you have foreign direct investment from an external brand, from one of the big 3 or big 4 in the cycling industry in terms of apparel, wanting to, pump in money to the cycling economy over here and saying like, hey, I want to have a store here. I want to hire a bunch of guys. I want to be able to touch communities, etc. And I want to have a piece of that pie. I think it's a truly amazing thing because the more you have in terms of choice, the more people will come to the sport. Yeah, it's truly beautiful thing. I think we as Rapha made that first move by opening this store in 2 years ago, followed by Paranormal last November, and then obviously Map a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Do you think then the selling point is the fact that you guys have a community that people will stick around and as compared, I'm not sure about other brands whether they have such a thing.
Yeah. So for us, okay, I may ruffle a couple of feathers, with the brand when I say this. And I think the product sells itself. If you want to buy a jersey, if you want to buy a pair of bib shorts, yes, I can tell you about the tech that goes behind it. I can tell you how amazing it is you're going to feel on the bike. I can tell you which pro cyclist is using it. But ultimately, to buy the jersey or that pair of bib shorts or that product is ultimately your decision. But I don't think that any of the brands out there truly have this real and honest purpose that we have. And it literally is to inspire the world to live by bike.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I said just now, on the rides that we do, we never ever mandate that it is a Rapha ride, you need to wear Rapha. Yeah, I've never ever said that. Unless, there is a special occasion or whatever, but we rarely ever say that. And you literally can come in anything you want to wear, but just wear something. Yeah.
The last question from me, I think, to finish this on a sweet note. 20th anniversary, what does this mean to you and for the rest of the Rapha crew?
Okay, so today, at the very end of the ride, right, we ended our ride at Sunny's, our favorite cafe, and we had breakfast. And there I was looking at that table of guys, and I was completely destroyed, okay, because a lot of them are national cyclists. We have Darren, who is our community SEA Games cyclist. We have Wei Jie, we have Han Yu, we have Jun Li. All these guys are super quick cyclists. And I was telling my wife, I was reaching the top of the climb, I was huffing and puffing, I was already putting out hundreds of watts, and then there they are zooming past me. And one thing that was truly beautiful about that reflection, when I told them about the fact that Rapha is 20 years old, there are some of them who are not even 20 years old. Yeah. And when you tell them that, and then that gravity actually weighs down on them, and this cycling brand is older than them, and it has built this amount of amazing things, and it has sponsored world tour teams. It's done so much for cycling, done so much for the community. I think it's a truly beautiful thing. Yeah. So if you ask me what do I think is the greatest achievement, it literally is the community.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know that was the last question, but something just popped up in my head. I just recognized some of my friends or someone that I've interviewed here before. And I was in Johor last weekend for the race, and
Yes.
I crashed, and I was talking to my friend, and I said, "Are you a Rapha member?" And she said, "Yeah, I used to be a Rapha member." And the reason why she was a Rapha member was because of the insurance. I know you guys used to offer that insurance.
Correct.
But apparently that is no longer the case.
Correct.
Any plans to bring back that kind of insurance? I guess that is a very attractive perk that Rapha offers.
Okay, so back then when we offered the insurance, on paper it did seem like a good idea. I'll be honest with you. I mean, when I signed up as a member, I put myself in the shoes of a member and I look at it on paper, wow, RCC offers insurance. But when you distill it, right, the insurance doesn't cover that much. The insurance doesn't cover the two most important things, which is the person and the bicycle. So the insurance covered things which were kind of like an accessory to the bike ride. Covers your glasses, covers your bike computer, covers your mobile phone, but it also puts into account, I would say, difficult conditions for you to make a claim. For starters, you will have to be the first owner of these things. You have the original receipts. You have to buy them new. Can't be secondhand. So on and so forth. You can only own them for X number of months, etc. So what we've done is that we've worked together with a fellow member of ours, and he has put together an insurance solution for us that we offer to members. And this insurance is actually very useful. It covers the person, it covers the bike. Yeah.
But we as cyclists, we don't really care about ourselves, right? Our bones all can heal.
You'll be surprised. I think sad to say, I'm a very good example of this. Yeah. So back when I was cycling in the French Alps, you can actually see the beautiful photos there, but you don't see the pictures of me on a hospital bed. Yeah. So I had a very, very bad crash on the very last day.
Yeah.
And it's a truly, it's almost like a Shakespearean kind of tragedy, My wife was supposed to come up to London to meet me at Rapha's celebration. So at Rapha, we used to celebrate the Grand Depart. So back then, the Grand Depart took place from London. So the Grand Depart, it means the start of the Tour de France. So every tour, they try to start from a different location. They try to celebrate a different element in a different city. So the plan was, me and my colleague together with a couple of members, a couple of Rapha customers who were riding in the French Alps. Then from there, I will go down there and meet my wife, and then we will have an amazing time in London. So I had a very bad crash. I actually went over the edge of the climb. I actually flew down like 80 to 100 meters. Had to be airlifted off via a helicopter into a hospital in Grenoble.
Broken bones and
Yeah, I actually broke every single vertebrae.
what the heck?
Yeah, I broke my neck, I broke my back. I was in a hospital in France for about 10 days. So I had to be evacuated by helicopter.
Right.
Yeah, and then sorry, it's a bit difficult for me to discuss, but medical, like, what do you call that? Yeah, medical escort had to come and take me in a stretcher all the way from the hospital to the airport. I couldn't even go in the normal way. I had to go in on a tarmac in a stretcher. They had to flatten the seats out for me on the plane, and then I had to, like, in a stretcher, come back all the way to Singapore. And then when I was in Singapore, like, an ambulance was waiting for me. Yeah, so I'm also truly grateful that my wife recommended me to buy insurance. Yeah, because at the very end of it, right, my insurance agent told me that my medical bills were in the excess of like $1 million. Yeah, too much.
Wow.
Impossible for me to pay. Like that repatriation, like having a medical escort, like come to France and get me from France. I remember we went from France to Turkey and then to Singapore.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm also very grateful for the friendships that I've had. So I made friends, with a couple of doctors, Fu Chexiang, Li Ziyi. They actually attended to me. And they fixed me basically. Yeah.
Okay.
So that journey for me never ended. I mean, like, even when I was in Singapore, I stayed in hospital here for like more than 20 days. You're really hiding at the back. Okay. Yeah, I want to recognize DeLeon, Javier, of course Darren. Yeah. Today is actually supposed to be an off day for us, but we came back here to do this thing. Darren and I have been here since 3 p.m. Yeah, DeLeon also came very early. Javier also came very early, set up the whole place, etc., etc. Obviously, I want to thank Oompa Loompa and his assistant. Thank you very much for doing this. It is,
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you may see him as like someone who is a YouTuber, a podcaster, or whatever. But I think what you don't see and what you realize is that he's very much like me. Someone who is truly passionate about a sport, someone who is truly passionate about bringing the sport to a higher level of appreciation and enjoyment. Yeah, and that's why we do what we do. It's not because I'm here to sell jerseys or sell bib shorts. It's not because of that. I don't get a cut. Like somebody was telling me, do you get a cut every time we sell jerseys or bib shorts? I said, no, we don't. I'm literally doing this because I love the sport. I probably love it more than you, and I want you to love it as much as me. Yeah. Because when you love the sport as much as me, that's when you truly appreciate and you truly understand how special cycling it is to us. Yeah. And he was here a couple of days, ago to set up, bringing out all this equipment. He has to arrange transport, etc. So thank you very much for all this effort.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
If you ride with me, gotta work for the both of us. I put you in the driver's seat. Gotta hurry in the name of love. In the name of love. In the name of love. In the name of love.